Chair, am I allowed to say I think it'd be, I think it'd be nice if we could invest in something like that because it just provides such a good service and it normally suggestion to. Oh, sorry, Chair, am I allowed to say?
Well, sorry. Well, we're just about to come back online. Okay, thank you. Welcome back to those watching on the YouTube channel. We move now to item 9, the pension monitoring update for the quarter ended 30th of September. The report, and there are 8 appendices. Appendices F, G and H are confidential, so any panel member wishing to make reference to anything that's contained within those should alert me in advance so that we can have that discussion in private. Bridget, Philip, anything to say by way of introduction? The usual chunky document.
Yeah.
Microphone, please.
I suppose probably good to home in on the items for approval. So Henley came initially last year to present, and at that point it was quite close to the closing of their initial fund, which was a close-ended fund. And so there was no time to sort of consider the investment proposition. And it was at that stage, not quite an investment proposition, but more a sort of training. We have an allocation of 1% for impact, for which we had a couple of presentations last week. And then we also had Henley. But in conversations with Philip, he thought that the Henley might fit in to the housing bucket, because if you remember, we've got a housing allocation of 10%, and that's currently underweight because there's a housing review that's going to be carried out, which is going to be commissioned this quarter for the advisors to carry out, given that we have better visibility around what's happening post-pandemic, or not quite post-pandemic, but more visibility. So the Henley might be considered as part of the housing bucket, also because they seem to have bigger tickets for their investments. And then there were two presentations you had last week, last meeting, which was the Darwin Bereavement Fund and the Temporis impact strategy, which is renewable energy. And there was some conversation last time as to, you liked it, you were a bit concerned about due diligence costs, at which point I said I will go and look at other authorities who might be investing in them. So I have found 3 other authorities who are investing in the proposition: Croydon, Southwark, and a few others up north, as well as the GLA, who were one of the early funders of the bereavement fund, as well as a lending fixed income for them to start. So the proposition is to take them to due diligence, working with other local authorities to keep the cost down, and then delegate to officers working with the chair, vice chair and opposition spokesman to invest from that impact bucket if the due diligence is satisfactory. So that's those 2 from the last time, and then the decision about Henley as well. So those are 2 items to consider for approval. Do you want to discuss before I go on? Or
Okay, well, what we'll do is we'll take the paper as a whole.
Okay.
Get any questions of detail dealt with, then we'll come back. Obviously, we've got 4 or 5 matters to approve and the rest to note. So quite correctly, I think you've identified we should separate those out for clarity. So in terms of the report in general and its appendices, any observations or questions to ask before we move to the recommendations? No? Thank you. Well, let us move back to, I'm going to take the those for approval first. So 1.6 relates to the two investment solutions, Diamond Bereavement Fund and Temporary Impact Strategy, on the basis that Bridget just outlined about mitigating our costs through shared activity with other other investors. Are we content to move forward with that? Thank you. As far as the presentation we've just received on the proposition from Henley Secure Income Jersey Property Unit Trust, are we content to enter into due diligence on the basis that Bridget outlined on that? Great. Thank you. 1.9, approving collaboration with the Borough of Merton and other funds lead to identify more strategies that can be funded from the impact bucket. We approve that. And 1.11, approved the revised investment strategy statement, which was attached with the updated investment beliefs agreed at the responsible investment workshop. That's Appendix C. Are we agreed to that? Thank you. Isn't it going tremendously well? And do we agree to note the other recommendations? 3. Thank you. That deals with item 9, I believe. Item 10, the fund annual report and audit arrangements, and 2 appendices. Bridget, anything to say?
Yes, nothing on this report except this is the annual report to approve. Again, happy to take any, corrections you want me to make, and also delegate us to finalize the report.
Any comments? Do we approve?
No.
Yep, thank you. And finally, item 11, Healing Pension Fund Responsible Investment, which is seeking to pull together into policy terms the outputs from the workshop that we had. I'd like, for the record, so obviously the workshop wasn't a formal meeting. I'd like to thank everybody who participated and was able to participate. I'd make a note of thanking those members of the pension board, the chair and other members who attended and contributed substantially to our discussion. So it's a kind of dialogue I hope we'll be able to continue into the future. The key element, obviously, is the decision on approving what emerged from that workshop, that we should adopt a net zero target of 2045, because, as it says in the report, the consensus timescale emanating from the workshop. Any comments on the paper before I take the recommendations? No? Do we approve the recommendations? And we agree to note the others? Yeah. Thank you very much. And that, I think, is that. The date of the next meeting will be the 10th of March 2022. An opportunity now for everybody. Thank you for coming, and a chance to go home and get warm. I'll see you all in March, and thank you to those online.